If you had £300 a month to get a new car, what would you do? Would you pay a hefty initial deposit and lease something brand new? Or would you take a loan? Would you buy something not quite brand new, but still pretty respectable? Or buy a cheap runaround and hope to make a profit by pocketing the difference every month? Well, that's the decision I had last year because I had a £300 a month car allowance from work. So I went for this, a 2008 Ford Mondeo estate. But in this video, we take a look and see exactly what this has cost over the last 12 months. How much those upgrades have cost us to give us those creature comforts that you just absolutely have to have in your daily driver. The breakdowns, how many times has this car left us stranded? How much has that cost us? And generally, how much general maintenance have we had to do to this over the last year? And then of course, later in the video, we're gonna look at whether or not this is gonna be worth going for another year. Has the last 12 months really taken its toll on this Mondeo? Or actually, are we gonna get a second year for free? Now I know what you're thinking, Tim, how did you get that for £200? Well, maybe the shitbox gods were smiling down on me that day. But in all seriousness, this was my brother's car. He'd had it for about 10 years. He got it on about 70,000 miles and drove it right the way up until the 213,000 miles it had when he sold it to me. It had about 3 weeks MOT left on it and he thought, you know what, it's probably not gonna go again. Went on WeBuyAnyCar.com, had a look to see what they'd offer him just to take it off their hands, and they offered £200. And the next thing he did, I will be eternally grateful for. Yeah, he picked up the phone and said, Tim, I know you love a shitbox. Do you want it? And here we are. And by pure accident, it looks like we've stumbled across the secret formula to successful Bangernomics. And if you fancy giving this a go, I've learned some lessons. So having a look at the car, it's a 2008 Ford Mondeo. I know, we've said that already, but this is the Titanium X. So if we have a look inside, electric windows all round. We've got a heated half leather interior. We've got automatic headlights. We've got a multi-functioning steering wheel with stereo controls and cruise control. It's a 6-speed manual. We've got climate control. Because this is a Titanium X, we've also got a factory fitted sat nav and Bluetooth hands-free. This car is as well spec'd as many modern cars that you'd go into the dealer and buy today. And like I said, this isn't just stuff that you find in a Ford Mondeo. Lots of cars around this age have got a similar spec. And now we know we can get cars from the late 2000s that are full of toys for a fraction of the cost they were brand new. I guess the next question is, how reliable are they? Is it something you could run daily? Well, I can only speak for this Ford Mondeo, but let's have a look over the last 12 months, see what we've spent to get us to where we are today. So let's start just over a year ago, back in October last year, when I bought this for £200, but it had 3 weeks MOT left on it. So I knew I was gonna need to spend some money. With the MOT due in November, I put it in for a test, just really to get a list of what was wrong and what I'd need to spend. But to my surprise, it actually passed. I know. So with that passed and legal for the next 12 months, it was time to get to work. So a quick oil and filter change meant that it brought our total for November up to £72. December, yep, month 3 of ownership, and that's when we really started spending some money. There were some things advised on the MOT, so the CV boot was perished but not leaking oil, so that needed to be changed. The exhaust clamp, there's a slight blow coming from the exhaust, nothing serious, but I wanted to take care of that. We also got pulled up on the MOT for some of the rear lights not working. It's okay, there are multiple, so it was an advisory, not a fail, but I wanted to get that sorted out. And then the last thing that I really wanted to deal with was the AC condenser, because the air conditioning on this car just didn't work. So I wanted to tackle that. So that meant that in December, we spent £197. But with that money spent, would we be good for the rest of the year? And with the car legal and the repairs done, it was time to take this car on a road trip. I'm a massive believer that if you want to form any sort of bond with your car, just get in it and go for a really long drive. But more importantly, go and make some memories with your car. Because when the car is long gone, those are the things that you're going to look back fondly on and remember that car with a warm, fuzzy feeling. And with Burns Night just around the corner, I decided to go on a road trip all the way up to Scotland. That's right, we did 1,000 miles in 2 days in this Mondeo. I made a video about that, but do you know what? I don't think anyone was interested in seeing it. But that doesn't matter because I had an amazing time and I've got so many fond memories, and that's what's important. On this road trip, I took in some truly breathtaking scenery, and I can still remember this really vividly in my mind. Driving up these roads into the moors, it was just, absolutely picturesque and stunning. And then I was even met with snow and fog. It just felt like another world. And this was important to me because on this road trip, I went to some places my wife had told me that she went as a child, and I got to see them. I also got to have haggis for breakfast in a castle on Burns night. Well, part of a castle that was in a petrol station, but a castle nevertheless. I mean, just look at the places this Mondeo took me. I will never forget this trip, and I won't forget this car either. But what it did mean is on the way back, I was going past Doncaster. So it meant I could stop in and get the facelift dash upgrade to give me a whole host of extra functionality. And that made such a difference. We've got a digital speedo, we've got parking sensor display actually in the dash. It just feels like it should be in a brand new car. It's just such a nice feature. And then we've got a more modern cruise control setup. Do you know what? If you've got a Ford Mondeo and it's a pre-facelift, then I think this is the one mod you can do that will totally transform the feel of your car from behind the steering wheel. Well, that and Apple CarPlay. So a couple of months later, that's what I did. I spent £183 upgrading the interior, some new mats, Apple CarPlay and digital radio. And nearly a year later, it still works absolutely perfectly. I'm so happy with it. It doesn't lag, it doesn't crash, it just works. And I think it's really important to remember when buying these cheap Android stereos that you need to go for a certain minimum specification, because anything less than that, you're gonna have a bad time. So you need to have as a minimum a 4-core processor, 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of storage. If you get yourself a twin core with 2 gigabytes of RAM, or even 1 gigabyte, I've seen some, which is just terrible. And that's never going to work with how big the Android operating system is, along with any other app that you're going to want to run. So do yourself a favor. If you're going to upgrade to a cheap CarPlay head unit, 4-core processor, if not 8, 4 gigabytes of RAM and 64 gigabytes of storage. If you do that, a year later, you're still going to be enjoying all of this CarPlay goodness. And in that month, we replaced the roof antenna as well, because if you remember, the original one was held on by super glue, which is why the original factory fitted sat-nav didn't work. So again, adding CarPlay fixed that problem. And then in May, we had our first breakdown. Yet we did so well to get nearly 6 months without an issue. Now, we didn't really break down. What happened was the rear caliper kind of stuck on. So I was away at a conference in Birmingham with work. I got in the car, ready to drive an hour and a half home, let the handbrake off, put the stereo on and just drove. It wasn't until I got home that I realised one of the rear calipers had stuck on slightly, meaning that we'd burnt out the pads, burnt out the disc, and the rear caliper needed changing. So while I was there, I decided to change all of the brakes. We fitted some larger Volvo XC60 twin pot calipers, along with larger discs from M-Tech and some uprated pads. While we were at it at the back, we also changed the rear discs and pads for some uprated M-Tech discs. Again, it was a bit of an extravagance. I didn't need to do it, and I kind of blew the budget. That was £370. If I just fitted standard discs and pads all round, I think I would have come in probably at about £100. So yeah, that one was on me, guys. After blowing the budget in May, I was hoping for a cheap June, but no, it wasn't to be. We had another breakdown. Or was it 2? And you can actually count these ones as breakdowns. Ever since I've had the Mondeo, I've had these random low battery warnings come up on the dash from time to time. I never really gave it much thought because the battery was 3 or 4 years old, and every time I got in, I'd push the button and the car would start. Until it didn't. It was a really hot night, so I had my windows open, and I'm guessing all of my neighbours had their windows open. And I could just hear this car alarm going off. And it turned out it was mine. I think the car detected that the battery was just so low, it thought it was being stolen and set the alarm off repeatedly. So some quick bodgery to get the car to shut up through the night, and then I had to go and buy another battery on the way up to the barn the next day. But before I had a chance to fit the new battery, while I'm driving to the barn, there was this rotational slapping, rotational clunking noise, and I thought it was the drive shaft that we'd replaced. I was feeling pretty bad at that point, but I got back and I popped the bonnet and I could see that the auxiliary belt had frayed and was slapping on that air conditioning pipe. That month, while we were in the barn, I wanted to re-bleed the brakes just to make sure that the brakes were spot on. I also re-gassed the air conditioning on the Mondeo as well, because we changed that air conditioning condenser in the dead of winter and I never got around to regassing it. And like I said, it was super hot in June. So I got the aircon regassed as well. And yeah, we've got nice cold air conditioning in the Mondeo, but it came at a cost. And that cost was £50. And then along with a parking sensor for the rear, we ended up spending £182 off the back of £370 the month before. The bills were starting to add up, but was I still in profit? Was this still a good idea? An Astra VXR, you don't see those very often. But anyway, let's head back to the barn and look at the final numbers. Because in September, we had to put a pair of rear tyres on, which was £104. So how far have we driven this car? Well, we got it on 213,000 miles, and now we're on a touch over 219,500 miles. So in a year, we've done 6,500 miles. I'm heading back to the workshop to take a look at this car and talk about whether or not it'll last another 12 months, but something doesn't feel right. I'm not doing this for the video, guys. Something feels like really, I'm doing like 60 miles an hour on the motorway and the steering's juddering, it's making a droning noise. Have I just got a puncture or has something more serious happened? Well, look, we're 3 miles away from the workshop, so let's get off the motorway and find out what's happened. Something sounds really bad. I think we're gonna have to pull over because I don't think we're gonna make it. I don't know if you can see it. Is there steam or something coming up? Is this horrible smell of brakes or clutch? Yeah, something is not good. So we are literally around the corner from the barn. So let's hope we can get to the barn. But yeah, I'm sat here in traffic, in neutral, and it is stinking. Yeah, it's smelling like burnt clutch. I don't know what that vibration and juddering was on the motorway. That noise coming from, yeah, do you know what? I don't know. And I'm not really dressed for it. So I think I'm gonna have to go home in the Mini, come back up tomorrow more suitably dressed and have a look and see if I can work out what's just gone wrong with this car. And more importantly, will this Mondeo go for another year? This is not how I saw this video ending. I'm gonna get in the car. I'll see you in the morning.
Sometime later.
We need to see what that noise was. It was a sort of rotational noise, wasn't it? We had a lot of steam or smoke or something coming from this side. So overnight, I've had a chance to think about it. Let's jack the car up and I'm just gonna check the brakes because it didn't sound like flywheel knocking or chattering. So let's go back to basics. Let's jack it up, let's spin the wheels and see if we can hear any noise. Now, before I jacked the car up, I went round and I checked all the tires. So it definitely wasn't a puncture or a flat tire. I had a quick look round when I put it away last night. So next up, we've got just a quick visual inspection of the wheel. The brake discs all look okay. So we'll give the wheel a quick spin, and that is a lot tighter than it should be. So this front brake has stuck on. Hopefully it hasn't caused any damage and warped the disc, but it looks like this brake upgrade I was so proud of myself for doing has ended up causing me issues further down the line. But at least it's something that's relatively straightforward to fix and not particularly costly. Because now I've got the carriers, I can buy a replacement caliper with a 5-year guarantee for about £50 on eBay. So that's what I'm gonna do. So it looks like for £50 and an hour's work, we can get this car back on the road again. So that's not the end of the world. But I guess the elephant in the room is the MOT status of this car, because every year in the UK, we need to get these things inspected to make sure that they are safe and fit to go on the road for another year. I had the R56, the turbocharged Mini, booked in for an MOT, but I was waiting on a couple of parts and I decided that actually I'll just put this in and see what it needs to get through for another year. So I'd done no preparation for this MOT because we were taking a slot that was booked for another car. So as I'm leaving the barn, I squirt the washer jets to just make sure that there's some washer fluid in there, and I send it. Because my thoughts behind it were, well, I'll get a list of what needs to be done, and I can make a decision whether or not it's worth doing that to keep it on the road for another year. Well, to my surprise, the Mondeo passed. Of course it did, because you've seen me driving it around in this video. So yeah, the Mondeo is on the road for another year. And other than a sticking caliper, I think we're good to go for another year. So what do I do for year 2? Do I carry on in the Mondeo that owes me nothing? In fact, I've made a tidy profit running it this year. And other than a brake caliper for £50, it looks like this thing is good to go back out on the road. Or do I sell it? Do I sell the Mondeo for what, £750? And then take the money that I've saved for my car allowance every month. And then I've got around £3,000 to buy something new. What could I buy for £3,000?
There's so much choice. There's so many cool cars for £3,000.
And I could spend the next year getting that £300 a month every month while driving something a bit newer. And that whole journey would have started from a £200 Ford Mondeo.
We started this a year ago with a £200 Ford Mondeo and a £300 a month car allowance. Over the year, including buying the car, we've spent £1,386, meaning we've pocketed £2,161. Almost £2,200 in the bank. What would you do? Would you sell up and get something a bit newer? Or would you stick with the Mondeo and just drive it until the wheels fall off with a smile on your face and a pocket full of cash? Let me know in the comments, guys, what would you do? And if you're new here, like the video, subscribe to the channel and check out this video and you can see how this all started.